So we'll just start going over it. So by the end of the day today, this is what we're going to be covering. You'll be able to describe the benefits of establishing a system of lead follow-up. You'll be able to apply the 19th to Connect touch campaign. That's keeping in touch with internet leads, like she mentioned before, and explain the importance of cementing the relationship with your leads. So let's start thinking about what you'll learn today. Consider what questions you might have and what about the lead follow-up you'd like to know more about. You can also look back or think about what you've learned in previous sessions, especially in the last section, which was lead generation, and also ask questions about that if you have them. So does anybody have any questions off the bat before I get into the rest of the material for today? You can just unmute if you have a question. And if nobody has a question, I'll just keep going. So we're going to turn to the lead follow-up page if you're following along in your guide. And a lead is a person who has shown interest in the service you provide, and you have their contact information, although they are yet to engage in a two-way conversation. So the online internet lead, that's a really good example of this. That's somebody that maybe clicked on your listing online, it came through to your systems. Maybe you did a Facebook post and you got their information that way, or a Facebook ad, but you have yet to actually talk to them over the phone or things like that. The goal of lead follow-up is to follow up with those type of leads with the goal of entering a two-way conversation. Does lead follow-up only apply to a lead? No, it doesn't. Every person in your database, whether it's a lead or a contact, requires follow-up. So that way, if they have real estate needs, then they think of you immediately. So that's talking about Sphere. Some of the first homes I sold to were like my friends' parents. So I literally put like everybody in my database. And this is going to teach you today to have follow-up systems for all of those type of people and not just leads that inquire about real estate. So how do you ensure that when the person thinks of real estate, they immediately think of you? That is what we're going to cover today. So let's go to the next page. We're going to review this graphic and what it means when it comes to lead follow-up. Everyone in your database lives on some point along these waves. At the top of the wave is when they purchase a house. The day after they buy a house is when they move down the wave and continue until they begin to think about another house. Over someone's lifetime, they have a potential to buy 1, 2, or 3 houses or more. The distance between those purchases is on the average of between 7 to 10 years. The last few years, I feel like it's been more like 2 to 3 years people were moving because interest rates were so low. But how the market is going, I think that we're going to start seeing people stay in their homes a little bit longer and closer to that 7 to 10 year mark. So if I gave you a lead to close to the top of the wave, what would you perceive about the quality of that lead? That's just saying the very top, obviously, that means they're ready to go. So that would be a really good lead. Most people would probably agree with that. And then if I gave you somebody at the bottom, where you see the point at the bottom, that means that they're not ready to move yet. You might think that that's not a quality lead, but in reality, it still is a good lead, because if you follow up with them correctly, when they're ready to move, they'll call you. And then also they know all sorts of people that might be at the top of the wave and they can refer you. So it's basically just saying, like, keep each lead as a priority and as equal as somebody that's ready to move right away. As a real estate agent, following up with all leads with frequency and intensity is the key to remaining in close emotional proximity. So as any lead approaches the top of the wave and are ready to purchase, they think of you. This is where the importance and value of lead follow-up comes into play. Somebody is messaging in the chat, so let me just read that really quick. Oh, yes, I can. There we go. Sorry, I'm really not on Zoom very much, so I don't know all the tips and tricks. Okay. So think of the leads that enter your database through lead generation as your possible business. Lead follow-up helps turn the leads from possible business into probable business with the end goal of being a profitable business. In 2021, the National Association of Realtors profile of home buyers and sellers details the opportunity that lead follow-ups can provide your business. They collected research that shows that when selecting an agent to use, 73% of buyers only talk to one agent, and 82% of sellers only contacted one agent. I just heard the stats on that, the more recent stats, and it's still pretty similar. A lot of times people are only talking to one agent, and a lot of times sellers don't interview more than one agent. So I know a lot of my clients are referrals, and they usually are not interviewing more than one agent. So as long as you are staying in front of them and they know that you're in real estate, you're typically going to win the business. Since the data shows that most buyers and sellers only talk to one agent before deciding to do business with them, what will you do to ensure that you are the one agent for everyone in your database? And they have a little quote for us here. If you aren't first or second in their mind, you probably won't get the business. So this concept is of taking up space in people's mind through staying in close emotional proximity to them is called mind share. Emotional proximity is a result of engaging in the touches with your database. Thinking back to the day you learned about lead generation, what touches are the strongest when it comes to relationship building, and what are the weakest? Does anybody want to share anything that you do in your lead generation that seems to be the strongest? No? Okay. Well, feel free to unmute if you want to share something. I feel like most people don't want to speak on Zoom. It wants you to speak in the class. So if you're not shy, unmute yourself. If you're shy, I'll just keep going. Meeting in person and a phone call are the touches that will have the greatest impact on the relationships you are building. Email and text are weaker related to forming connections and bonds. While you will lead follow up using a variety of touches, it's important to keep in mind which ones will be most effective as you follow up. So I think that texting can be as good as a phone call depending on your client. If your client is older, they're not going to feel connected to you if you're texting. If your client is like in the 30s, like younger than 30, or like up to maybe 40, 45, texting is going to be probably more convenient to them because we all grew up with phones for a long enough time where a phone call annoys us. So like if somebody calls me, I'm actually annoyed because I don't have time to answer the phone, but I appreciate a text. So I always say like this program was written, years and years ago, and they've revamped it and all of that. But the data for texting does not go as far back as phone calls. So I think that can be subjective, but it is definitely always good to have phone calls with people, but I would make texting just as important. So if you're just calling and you're not getting to them, definitely send a text message. And then emails, obviously, there's lots of data out there that shows emailing works and it's great, but it's not going to be as personable as a text or a call. So if you do nothing, then you should call, text, and email because those are all free advertising for you, free communication, and everything else costs money. So like a direct mail or a note card or driving by their house, all that costs gas and money and time, and emailing and texting and calling is free ways to follow up. That's my little added tidbit. So ahas, we share ahas because they are powerful and meaningful insights that come from reflection on the experiences we are having. When we share them out loud, we further strengthen the power of the aha, and we help fellow participants have powerful aha as well. Does anybody want to share any ahas that they learned from the previous segment there?
So I just put in the chat emotional proximity. And what that means to me, it just meet them where their questions are, where, especially if you're meeting them in person, you can see when they have a question or an objection, you can see their facial expressions on about whatever you're talking about, and, you know, try to dig into that a little bit more, ask more questions, and make sure that you are acknowledging their feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that mirror and matching, I don't know if you guys learned about mirror and matching yet, but that's big with Gary Keller and Keller Williams in general, goes a long way. I just had a listing appointment with a client that was 85 years old, and he had a really hard time talking fast. And as you can probably tell, I'm a very straight to the point person. I talk really fast, and it pains me like nails on a chalkboard to listen to somebody that talks slow, but I have to mirror and match that. And I have to slow my voice down, and I have to let him speak and finish so that he feels like I'm understanding him and that I'm appreciating where he's at and what he has to say. So I think that is huge, and that we have to learn how to do that over the phone and phone calls too, and in emails too, and try to gauge the tone and get to know their personality so that we can match them and make them feel important. And if you do that, then they'll use you as your agent, as their agent. So anybody else want to share an aha? Okay, we'll move on. So just like your intention to be strategic with your lead generation efforts, you should be strategic with your lead follow-up efforts, being thoughtful about how you will follow up and leverage the highest value touches that yield the greatest result will help you convert leads at a higher level. So you guys can turn to the fortune is in the follow-up Mindshare page in your participant guide if you're following along. Mindshare is gained through positioning yourself in front of your leads frequently with relevant and timely information. The goal is to open the door to two-way communication in addition to getting them to think about you anytime they think about real estate. Through Ignite, you have been introduced to two different systems that engage your leads and contacts to help you gain mindshare. These systems are 19 to connect and 36 to convert. So if you haven't reviewed those or you don't remember what they are, the 19 to connect is a drip campaign or a auto plan for you to apply to anybody that you haven't met. And this works on farms. If you live in a neighborhood and you're trying to reach your neighbors, that would be people that you have not met, you haven't had an actual relationship with, that would be 19 to connect. You're trying to get them to connect with you. This could also be a list on an open house sheet, like maybe you didn't feel like your communication with them gained you their business, add them on the 19 to connect, engage with them some more after the open house, things like that. 36 to convert is people that you have met. So this would be like your sphere, any friends or family, your maybe your spouse's coworkers, your previous coworkers from another job, pretty much anybody that you know that already knows, likes, and trusts you, even leads, you're trying to get them into that category. So you can have them on a 19 to connect when you feel like you've gained their trust and you have their rapport. The goal is to turn them over to your 36 to connect. So that way you're staying in front of them and you're following up with them more. So those are the two different programs that you have free access to with Keller Williams, which is awesome because a lot of other companies, they don't provide this type of stuff. So these are the let me turn the page here. Okay, so this is going to give you an overview of what each of the programs are. So these are the recommended systems for touch campaigns. You were first introduced during the lead generation segment. With leads, we will specifically use 19-2Connect. So it's calling leads like an internet lead that would come in, or a farm, but basically the leads that it's referring to is have not mets is what we used to call them. Now they're calling them leads, but it can be confusing because your sphere can also be leads in the 19-2Connect or in the 36-to-convert. So every time I go over this class, everybody's really confused when I say the word leads. But it just means like a person you haven't met that you think will do business with you. So they came through your open house, or they inquired on a listing online, stuff like that. Okay. So to review the 19-to-Connect, it's made up of 4 phone calls, 12 touches that are monthly email, newsletter, market reports, videos, etc. Some people like to do a monthly newsletter on their own. Some people just like to do a little market update, and they email their clients every month and say, this, it's the first of the month. This is how the market did last month. This is how many listings are on the market, things like that. You could do a video every month, like a YouTube video, and then you share it out to your clients, whatever you want. Some people will do like what events are going on in town, what neighborhoods are their favorite, whatever. Like that part is up to your own creative business, what you want to do. Maybe you have a certain niche in your business and you want to highlight that each month. The point is that they're getting something in their email every month from you. 2 touches related to promotional direct mail, and then 1 touch that is a client event or party. This would be like if you were trying to farm your neighborhood, maybe hosting ice cream social in the park or something like that. That would be like a client event. So the intent of these touches is to be spread out over a calendar year, which equates to about 1 touch every 3 weeks. The goal of this communication is to establish a formal relationship and open 2-way communication. Keep in mind that this is just a list and not perspective of the order you should complete them in. For example, 4 phone calls will have the greatest impact if you spread them out once a quarter. So you don't have to call them 4 times in the same month. When do you think a lead should be added to your 19-to-Connect touch campaign? Kind of already told you. Farming, open house, internet leads, that's all 19-to-Connect. A lead should be added to your touch campaign immediately. Be aware that when communicating with leads, it's speed to lead. So they talk about speed to lead, that this is how quickly you reach out after the lead has engaged with you. So that's more so talking about internet leads. If somebody commented on a listing you posted on Instagram or Facebook, or you're paying for Google pay-per-click ads and you're getting internet leads or Zillow leads, speed to lead means getting in touch with them ASAP, because a lot of times they're just clicking through the internet and they may click on another agent's information. So you want to be the first one to be in front of them. Your speed to lead should be rapid. Just think that if a lead entered your database through a social media post, and consider how quickly that person has already moved on to engaging and interacting with other social media. That's basically what I just said. What if the next account they interact with is also a real estate agent? So as you get started in your real estate career and as you begin to generate leads during Ignite, there are some considerations you should make regarding your own lead follow-up plan. You will be using the lead follow-up best practices page in your participant guide for some brainstorming. It wants us to do a little exercise, but we're not in person, so we'll just go through it together. Some things to consider when following up with the leads are match the touch campaign with your strengths. So that's kind of like what I mentioned about if you have a niche that your business has, then matching, like staying on brand with your business and getting ideas to connect with your leads that are your strengths. Like if you're better in person, then maybe hosting events is better for you than constantly calling. Be prepared when you reach out with the reason you are calling or contacting the lead. For example, sending marketing information as the touch prior to a phone call. So for instance, if you do a monthly market update and you send it to those leads, then use that as a reason for your phone call. So you can say, hey, I wanted to let you know, I just sent you a market report. It has this, this, and this information in it. Did you get it? I wanted to make sure it didn't go to spam. Do you have any questions? Yada, yada, yada. It's just a good reason to call them if you don't have any other reason to call them. It opens up the conversation. Make sure that each time you communicate with the lead, they know that you are in real estate, how to reach you, and how to refer business to you. Know when you are going to complete your daily lead follow-up tasks. This should be time blocked as a separate activity from your lead generation time. Set your personal standard for speed to lead. What time frame do you expect yourself to communicate with the lead? Okay, so you guys can design your own 19 to Connect plan. So here is an example of a 19 to Connect plan. So it says, review the details on the slide, So 19 to Connect is based on the best practices of top agents. The first two columns are the magic of the plan and nothing should be eliminated. So it's basically saying create it your own, but definitely call 4 times a year and email 12 times a year. So if you don't do anything else, stick to those. But the plan part, like the birthday card, market reports, that doesn't have to be this exact plan. You can make that, if you don't want to send a birthday card and you think that's cheesy, then you don't have to do that. You just think of a different type of email to send. So these are all just examples in the plan column, and you're welcome to use these ideas or you can change them. Okay, when you have generated a lead and captured their information, you can then talk to them. If you haven't heard back and you don't know much about the person, then your communication will be broader and focusing on a range of values. This is where you'll communicate your value with your own value proposition, which you did in day 4 of Ignite. You can even use the company or personal statistics. We know that people are most likely to respond when the message you are communicating feels personal and relevant to them. As you engage with your leads, you can uncover how to serve them better and learn what they are interested in. As you learn this, you segment your leads into more specific groups covered on day 6 of Ignite and can communicate with more detail and value-based information. Relevant conversation has more value and timely and lead to a greater opportunity for future convert. So basically what it's saying is, if you don't know anything about this lead that came through, then have some talking points, go over scripts, make sure that you know what you're going to be saying when you call them, things like that. If you do know a little bit about them, like it's your neighborhood and you know things going on in your neighborhood, or you do an annual garage sale every year, those are talking points that will relate to them and connect them with you. So you should definitely use those. We all have access to Command. So if you don't have a CRM that you like or pay for, then definitely utilize Command and make notes in there about each lead. So if you have a conversation with a lead and it's as quick as, hey, I'm working right now, I can't talk to you, make a note in Command that says, 4 o'clock on Tuesdays, they're working. So that way, when you go to do your lead generation, you don't call them again at 4 o'clock on Tuesday because you know they're working. Like little things like that, you wouldn't think to type in a note, but it actually makes sense if you read it back the next day and you use that information. Or if they say, I've got 2 kids screaming in the car right now. Okay, I'm making a note. They have 2 kids. So now if I need a reason to call them, I can say, hey, I remember you said you had 2 kids. I'm just calling to let you know there's this really fun free event going on, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't always have to be calling them about real estate. You're basically just telling them that you're the local expert and you're thinking of them, and then they're going to think of you next time. So that's all that means, is having good points of communication with them. It says to turn to your communicate with value page and your participant guide. Once you know the source of the lead, you can narrow down your range of value. Knowing the source of the lead helps inform you on how you can pair a value with your communication. Basically everything I just said. So it says to complete an activity by brainstorming statements and questions you can use when communicating with different lead sources in your database. Does anybody want to do this together and volunteer just an idea about leads that might be in your database? That would be good talking points. Anyone? Bueller? Okay, well, I feel like I gave some good examples. So we kind of did the activity. So it says, first consider the lead sources that you already have in your database. If you aren't sure where to start with referrals, open houses, social media. Those are activities you've learned about and engaged with in Ignite. So you guys can on your own after this, or as you're planning your 19 to Connect, brainstorm ideas from different lead sources. So if you do open houses all the time, then come up with some scripts or write some notes on good talking points with open house leads. So basically just prepping you so that you don't feel like scared to have a phone call. The more prepped you are, the less you're going to feel nervous about lead generating and making those calls. So it's just going over some talking points again. It wants you to brainstorm and write statements or questions that you could consider using when communicating with different people in your database. So some examples are, why are you thinking about buying or selling? Tell me more about that. What will that do for you and your family? Things like that. Any ahas from that section before we move on that anybody wants to share?
Well, for me, it's mostly just that just a reminder that you got to, even if it's somebody that you're familiar with, that you still have to keep connecting. You know, that's one of those. I guess you think that there are some people that are givens in your life, but you don't. It's what's the word I'm looking for? You still have to remind them what you do for a living, I guess, is the, if that makes sense, if that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, 110%. One of my best friends from high school literally just went pending on a house. And I went to every like quarter, I plan a play date with us and our kids to stay in contact. And also because she's my friend, but she's like, oh, you were out of town and it happened so fast, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I forgot to remind my sphere that when I'm out of town, I have somebody cover for me so I can still help you. So you don't have to use a random agent. Things like that we wouldn't think about because it's like somebody close to you that should know that they can call you even if you're out of town. It's like, nope, they need to be reminded of those things. And it's just crazy. So yeah, staying in contact with people, reminding them stuff that you think would be, they wouldn't need reminded of, they actually do. Okay, anybody else? All right, we'll move on. So you can go to your post lead follow-up page in your participant guide. Once you follow up with the lead and you have permission to have that two-way conversation, what do you think happens to that person? So after you obtain permission to have the two-way conversation, the lead then becomes a contact in your database. So they're calling contacts people that you know, or people that you've already had enough of engaging conversations with that you can move them to the 36 to convert. So in Command, you will do this manually. So you'll switch them from the 19 to connect to the 36 to convert. So they're on 19 to connect. That's a 12-month plan, but they end up being a lead that talks to you often and you feel like you've gotten a good rapport with them. You can stop the 19 to connect plan and move them to 36 to convert. So you don't necessarily have to keep them on 19 to connect for 12 months. It's kind of like a game. You want to get them over to your 36 to convert. So this also means that you will move the lead from 19 to connect to 36 to convert. You achieved the purpose of 19 to connect, which was to connect with that lead, opening the door for a two-way conversation. Connecting with that lead does not necessarily mean that they will do business with you or that your relationship is as strong as it could be. That is why you then continue into another touch campaign. Whether it is a lead or a contact in your database. So the lead, remember, is somebody that you don't know. Contact is somebody that you've engaged with and that knows, likes, and trusts you now. This is how you'll gain and keep mindshare while continuing to do all the jobs as a real estate agent. At this point where a lead opens the door for two-way conversation, you must cement the relationship. Everyone in your database should be cemented right when you transition them from 36 to convert. You can look at the post lead follow-up page in your participant guide. What do you think the purpose of the 1 to cement touch campaign is? The cement touch is a high value touch that offers a strong first impression and sets the tone for your relationship together. Whatever you choose here should serve more than one purpose. This touch should tell them about the service you provide, help set up a conversation for later, serve as a reminder of the interaction, and tell them how to refer business to you. What are some options you could offer as your 1 to cement? What are other agents using and finding success with? Does anybody want to share what they think the 1 to cement value touch should be? Or are we still confused on this? Because they didn't really explain it that great. Still confused? Okay. So basically what they're saying is, this is mainly for if you're trying to farm or it's an online lead or somebody that really doesn't know you. A 1 to cement is like, you're giving them something of value to like prove your worth to them before you put them into 36 touch. For instance, if you had a really good conversation with a seller lead, and you're going to move them over to 36 to connect because they're thinking about moving in 2 years, but they don't know, and you've offered them like a little quick CMA to give them what their home might be worth, I would send them like a $5 Starbucks card and be like, a little note that says, hey, I had fun looking into your home for you. Here's a coffee on me. Can't wait to connect in the future, like something like that. Or you could, if they didn't ask for a CMA, you could maybe drop one off to them and with a note that says, hey, I know you're not wanting to move until 1 or 2 years, but I just wanted to let you know how much your home is worth today. It's always good to know what your equity is in your home. Here's a quick CMA for you. Can't wait to connect in the future again. Things like that would be a 1 to cement. And they're going to give us some more examples too. So they say, what are some options you could offer? What if you offered the Keller Ink book, your first home? So that would be like a gift to a home buyer. Maybe they're a year out from buying a home. You could give them that Keller Ink book. This is all Keller Williams training. So they're pushing the Keller Williams book sales. you don't have to give them something that, I mean, that's like $15. You don't have to give them something that expensive unless it's like a luxury lead or, something that's worth it. I feel like when we're all new, we don't want to spend a bunch of money. So that's why it's like, it costs you nothing to go and give them a CMA at their door with a nice handwritten note. And that's really valuable and something that somebody appreciates. Or if it's a buyer and you've never met them in person, offer to take them to coffee and just say, hey, I'd love to meet you for coffee. I know you're a year out, but I can just explain the process so you can start planning. Things like that would be like a one to cement the relationship. Okay. This one went by kind of fast, but are there any ahas with that section? No. Okay. Oh, I guess, are we done already? It didn't really go over the 36 to connect. Oh, I think maybe you do that in the next one. You go over the 36 to convert. Yeah, so I guess we're done. Do we have any questions about everything we just covered, or do you have any questions that you're dealing with today in your transactions that you would like to ask questions about?
I have a question about internet leads, paying for those. I've heard mixed reviews of like it's worth it, it's not worth it. Do you know, like in your experience or hearing from anyone else, is there a certain company that's better than others to go with, or what's your opinion on paying for internet leads?
It's a very long-term game. So I was on well, you guys have probably heard of the Josh Coley team. So when I started, I was on Josh's team for 2 or 3 years. We're still best friends. We just were in Mexico last week. And his team had a lot of internet leads because he has a big team. He needs to like spread out leads to everybody. It's very expensive. It's a lot of overhead as a single agent to do that. So I think the most value out of your business when you're a single agent is people that you know and spending that money connecting with people personally. So like if you've got neighbors, connecting with your neighbors personally, maybe doing like little pop buys in the neighborhood or hosting and like I said, an ice cream social in your neighborhood, like a meet and greet the neighbors, or if your kid is on a soccer team, hosting maybe a end of season party for the kids and wearing your realtor shirt or something and just saying, this is sponsored by my business. Like, if you didn't already know, I'm also a realtor, blah, 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 things like that. I think your money goes so much further that way and you gain more business with personal relationships than internet leads. Do internet leads work? Of course they do, but it is definitely like a long-term gain. You have to buy a lot of leads because the conversion rates are lower and you have to work them for a long time. So like a lot of times if you're shopping online and you're clicking on an ad or something, you're like a year or 2 out. So you have to really have a plan and a system in place to follow up with those leads. Which
that makes sense
with Keller Williams. So you can do them, but costs a lot of money.
Totally. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Doesn't sound like it. Well, good job getting started, you guys. I'm just a single agent, but I've been doing it for 10 years and it's been a really great career. So I know at Keller Williams, it can be intimidating because there's a lot of big teams like Josh's team or what big agents, but you don't have to be like this gigantic, huge agent to have a successful business. And I feel like in the beginning, I had a lot of pressure on me to do that. But if you literally just like do these systems and get, like your lead follow-up plans in place, it will bring you business for years and years and years, which is amazing. But that's the hardest part to do as an agent, is to just get organized in this way. So good job for you guys for learning all of it. Thanks for hanging out. I guess we're all done. Bye.